And welcome back to New York to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio. Your direct feed for all that is sports. This is episode 80. Ricky K here with you in the house today. We've got a jam-packed episode for you. Of course, we're going to actually lead with St. John's, their first Big East regular season title since 1985. Rick Pitino continuing to work magic. What is the ceiling for the St. John's team? What is how much can they go in the tournament? We'll dive into all that coming up next. Speaking of their team in Madison Square Garden, the Knicks have won 3 in a row. Starting to play a little bit of basketball. They get Mitchell Robinson back. Talk about how clutch Jalen Brunson has been over the course of this last week. The NHL trade deadline is Friday. The Rangers are making moves. They sent Ryan Weaver to Colorado. Are they trying to sell? Or are there other moves in store that could possibly happen that maybe make this team a playoff contender? We look at the Devils and the Islanders as well. The minutes out of the combine for the Giants and Jets. The Giants want to trade us for number 1, and they really want Aaron Rodgers. Well, dive into that, and the Jets look at the rookie quarterbacks. We'll talk Mets. We'll talk Yankees spring training injuries. And they actually survived spring with the roster healthy. Red Bulls get to win in the home opener, make a bit of history, and NYCFC takes a tough loss in LA. Some of the same problems from last year. They can't close games late. Plus, boxing at the Barclays. There is so much New York sports going on. March Madness is almost here. It's our first episode of March. Join me here on the New York State of Sports. We will be back in a second. And of course, welcome back to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you. First Monday in March. We're only about a few weeks from opening day in baseball. 2 weeks from now, we're going to get a chance to talk March Madness and the bracket. And next week, around this time, it's going to be NFL free agency. So much going on. We got the trade deadline, the NHL this week. It's a nonstop time for sports, and we're glad you're taking the ride here on our 80th episode of New York State of Sports. Want to remind you, of course, that you can follow IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Go to IESportsRadio.com. We have awesome show pages for each show. You can learn more about our host, learn more about me. If you happen to miss this show or you just want to hear me talk again, you download the podcast on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, all those fun things. If you're listening on the podcast services, we definitely do appreciate it. Want to remind you can also follow me on X at Rickenator555. You can follow the show on X at NY States Sports IE. I want to remind you, of course, as we get into March, about our supporters club. It's unique for every show here on the network. If you are a supporter of this show, and I greatly appreciate it if you are, feel free to download for our supporters club. It's $5 a month. We're going to give you a couple opportunities. If you do decide to sign up, you could pick the theme of an episode. You could join me on that episode. You could also, we're thinking about unique episodes that we could do specifically for Supporters Club. I'm thinking about maybe next week for the Big East tournament doing some St. John's post games after that as we get you set for March Madness. So those are some ideas on the table, but I greatly do appreciate all of you that have supported the show. And if you feel so inclined, sign up for the Supporters Club today. Got a couple commenters here in the chat. Taryn's in the house. Taryn, thanks for dropping in as always. My good buddy Ralph from the Yinzer Report, checking out his home city. We're going to get into the Islanders a little bit later. I'm going to save this comment about the Islanders being buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. Probably going to lean the latter, but we'll dive into that a little bit. But first, let's hear from word from our sponsors. We'll come back, and normally we usually end the show with St. John's, but we are going to lead with St. John's today because they deserve that. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. We will be back in a few minutes.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
course, thanks to our awesome sponsors here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. Of course, to get to March Madness and opening day, you want to check out that Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Some awesome flavors. Remember the jerky that is on a whole other planet. Vital Apparel, great cause for mental health awareness. So if you go to the gym, get some cool apparel, help yourself both physically and mentally. Seal the Deal Wax Seals for those awesome parties and invitations. And of course, check out our good folks here at IE Sports Radio. We got live shows every day during the week. So any chance, region, sport, we probably have what you're looking for. And of course, want to thank our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Remember, go to getrawnutrition.com. Use the promo code IESR and you get 10% off of your purchase. So be sure to take advantage of that today. So as I said, we normally do close each episode with St. John's as of late because the AP poll comes out at 1 o'clock and we like to kind of react to where St. John's is in the poll. But we can't ignore what has become the biggest story, not only in New York sports, but I think a top 5 story nationally. And that is St. John's after their wins over Butler on the road this week, the win over Seton Hall on Saturday at the Garden, gets its first Big East regular season title since 1985. 40 years ago, when the late great Lou Carnesecca was coaching this team, the glory days of St. John's, Walter Berry, Chris Mullen. Remember, I was born in 92. So that was the last time they at least had a share of the title was 92. Full disclosure, I am a St. John's alum. I went to St. John's from 2010 to about 2014. So when I was in school, they did make 2 NCAA tournaments, one with Steve Lavin as the coach, but both with Steve Lavin as the coach. 2 different teams. There was the DJ Kennedy team when he got hurt in the Big East tournament. I was at that game. They ended up losing to Gonzaga in the first round. Then years later, they lose to San Diego State in the first round. Crystal Beck got suspended right before the tournament. But those teams, again, good teams, but not the ceiling that this team is at. I mean, you look at St. John's with 1 game to go in the regular season. They are 17-2 in the Big East and 26-4 overall. To put the 17-2 in perspective first, last year, the UConn team that won the national championship went 18-2 in the Big East. So I don't want to hear about, oh, the Big East is weak. The Big East isn't as good as it should be. They're probably going to get 5 teams into the NCAA tournament. Last year, they only got 3. Probably should have had 4. So the Big East, I think, is stronger, at least at the top, than it was last year. So I don't want to hear any of that. Their 4 losses this year are by a combined 7 points. 7 points. And you can look at the controversial loss to Baylor in the Bahamas. You could look at the loss against Creighton, which if you're watching the documentary, the R.J. Lewis, according to Rick Pitino, ran the wrong play. You could look at the Georgia game, and Georgia right now at least looks like at least a bubble NCAA tournament team. And the Villanova game where they gave up a 3 with 20 seconds left. Now, Pitino has said that there were a couple of close games that could have been losses on the stat sheet. But still, to have this team 26-4 to, as of noon, number 7 in the AP poll. I mean, Rick Pitino in year 2 creates magic everywhere he goes. But I don't think anybody expected him to do this. Winning a conference at 5 different schools. Going to take a 6th school to the NCAA tournament. And there's a reason that Rick Pitino is arguably, I think, at least a top 5 coach of all time. I mean, you think about where this St. John's program was, where they were struggling to stay regionally relevant. You know, Chris Mullen made the tournament at the end of his coaching tenure, but they were a first 4-in team. Like they played the first 4, lost to Arizona State. Then Mike Anderson took the job, but nobody wanted it and didn't have any good results. And people are wondering, okay, it's got to be Rick Pitino. They've got to take a shot. They've got to take a big swing. And Father Shanley, the president, has done a fantastic job. And you've read stories about how Father Shanley contacted Mike Changizi, the former Big East commissioner, and Changizi said, you got to get that guy. Like, no other option. Go get that guy. That guy's going to make you relevant. Rick Pitino's done just that. And as Ralph pointed out, he had the white suit on Saturday. It was a whiteout at Madison Square Garden, sellout crowd. They moved the game from Queens to MSG. Sellout crowd, senior day. And the game was a lot closer than people expected. And even Patino said afterwards, and I'll echo that, Seton Hall played a really good game defensively. And you could say St. John's was robbed a little bit of the pressure of the moment, all the talk around this team and everything. I think they played a little tight against Butler. But again, we told you last week that game was going to be tough. Hinkle Fieldhouse is a tough place to play. Butler's a team you could see next week in the first quarterfinal game of the Big East tournament. That's a noon tip next Thursday on Peacock. And next week we'll preview the Big East tournament in depth a little bit. But Seton Hall played a strong defensive game. I mean, St. John's missed its first 8 shots in the game. Seton Hall held St. John's to 43% shooting. But the Pirates couldn't make any threes. Red Storm dominated them on the glass. Seton Hall had 23 boards total. St. John's had 14 just on the offensive side. And despite committing 16 turnovers, Seton Hall doesn't have the offense, even though Isaiah Coleman is a really good player, that is going to take advantage of that. Other teams will in March Madness if St. John's is a game like that. But to at least survive these games, to win these games, again, speaks to the culture that Patino has built. If you've watched the documentary on Vice, which has been really good, the 3 episodes in, I think the 4th one is tomorrow, and it talks about NIL and the UConn stuff. And I was listening to the Eye of the Storm podcast, and he had the Vice producer on, and they were only going to schedule episodes up until Selection Sunday. And it sounds like they're going to extend that documentary into the NCAA tournament based on this story. I mean, Rick Pitino to me is the National Coach of the Year. I know Bruce Pearl has done great things at Auburn, and they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. I know John Shires had a really good year at Duke, but come on. To see St. John's potentially maybe in an hour be in the top 5 of the 8 people with all these SEC schools, with the way Houston's going, nobody thought this. And it's just a reminder to just enjoy the run this team is on, because hopefully this is the start of something. This is the start of creating a culture. This is the start of doing things. Like, we're going to get caught up, and if they lose the Big East tournament, like they don't win at their home floor or they lose early in the tournament, we're going to look back and think this is a disappointment. Remember what you feel like right now. If you're a Red Storm alum, if you're a fan, if you're just enjoying the story of what this team's been able to do. That, again, I think everyone expected a tournament appearance in year 2, but nobody expected what they've done. And that's a credit to those players as well. And the question that's going to come up over the next week is, who is the Big East Player of the Year? Is it RJ Lewis, who has definitely changed his game? You saw him and Pitino on the Inside College Basketball show on CBS yesterday. And Lewis, even Pitino talked about, he's a player like Donovan Mitchell who could be better in the pros than he was in college. That continues to develop. He's an athlete. He has a great mid-range jumper, good defender. I mean, he's probably the odds-on favorite to win Big East Player of the Year, but you look at 2 other guys that could make a good case. Kadari Richmond has been a much better player over the last month. Remember, he was disappointing earlier in the year, but he has gotten better. The shot's still a work in progress, but he's very good at getting to the basket, very good at getting to the free throw line. And Zubi Ejiofor, who Pitino has called the MVP of this team, the leader on this team. He's a guy that when he gets going in the paint, he gets going defensively, he can switch on to guards. That's a game changer. The way Richmond and Devion Smith have learned to play with each other. I mean, Smith coming over as a transfer has done a nice job. Aaron Scott, who wasn't healthy on Saturday, hopefully he heals up that hamstring. Aaron Scott's a spark plug with his 3-point shooting and his ability to play some defense out of North Texas. I mean, hopefully you get to start to see the depth of this team on the bench get some more love. Ruben Prey, who's been good on the board. Simeon Wilcher. Prey hit a huge 3, by the way, in the second half against Seton Hall. Wilcher, I think, has been a good player. Lefties hit a shot or 2. You've seen Abine Ayo do a really good job. I mean, the depth is starting to become better, and they're dealing with injuries themselves. With Bray. Imagine if Brady Dunlap was on this team still after he got hurt, and he could shoot the 3 a little bit. Or Jaden Glover. Like, they built a strong foundation. And Edward Cole, I think the AD also deserves some credit as well. So the question is going to be a couple of things as we get in the next 2 weeks. What seed do they get in the NCAA tournament? Right now, I think there are 3, but the seed doesn't really matter as much as the region, I think. And Ralph brings this up as well. The goal for this St. John's team is to be in the East region, the NCAA tournament. If they are the 3 seed in the East, their first 2 games, if they do win their first round game, their first 2 games will be in Providence, Rhode Island. Remember, Pitino coached at Providence, and this is a big, it's close by for St. John's fans to travel and go to these games, but the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight would be at the Prudential Center in Newark as essentially St. John's home games. And imagine, again, I've said this, the dream scenario, if you are a basketball fan, maybe not as a St. John's fan, because I don't think maybe they match up with this team as well, is Cooper Flagg and Duke. Now, that would be an Elite Eight, more so with Duke being a 1 seed, but I think St. John's has the ability to compete with most teams in the country. If they can defend, if they even just hit a little bit of three-point shots, they're right in the mix, easily. So their final game of the regular season is at Marquette. That's a noon tip on Fox. I kind of wish it was a later game. Remember, they announced these times 2 weeks ago. Marquette, to me, is an interesting team. We saw them the first matchup. There was a rock fight at the Garden. Cam Jones, the player that can take over. Jones dealt with some foul trouble. We saw Stevie Mitchell deal with foul trouble. But the key game to watch might not necessarily be this one, because if I'm St. John's, to me, this game, I'd rather see the players get healthy for the next couple of weeks. If they lose this game, it's no big deal in my mind. But the key game to watch this week is probably going to be Wednesday. Now, why is it Wednesday? Marquette plays Connecticut. The winner of that game is probably going to finish the 2 seed in the Big East as a brand, or at least as the 3 seed. So if you look at the Big East standings right now, as it stands, you have the Johnnies obviously winning the league. Marquette and Creighton are tied at 13-5 in the conference, and UConn is 12-6. If UConn wins, remember UConn has the win over Creighton as well. They split with them in the regular season. So if UConn wins out, and you look at UConn's schedule, they have Seton Hall. Yes, they lost to, but that game is at Gamble next Saturday. UConn would be the 2. So if that is the case, and you're St. John's, and that path to the Big East tournament final is through Marquette and Xavier, let's say, or Marquette and Creighton or Xavier or something like that, then you could not having to play UConn until the final, you're probably looking forward to that. So just a couple of things I think to monitor, at least in the Big East, but enjoy this if you're St. John's, because it's been absolutely incredible. Speaking of the other basketball team that plays at Madison Square Garden, let's talk some Knicks. And to me, I buried this Knicks team last week, and I think they deserved it. Embarrassed by the Cavs, embarrassed by the Celtics, looking like a team that couldn't compete. And it's not that the Knicks are bad. I don't believe that in the slightest. I just think, again, they're the 4th or 5th best team in the NBA. And in normal years, that'd be great. But you think about what they did this week, and they showed a lot of grit in some of these games. It started on Wednesday. They played the Sixers. It was not a game that people expected to be close, but it was. Philly ended up losing 118-105. Brunson had 34 points, 7 assists. Bridges had 28 points. You had 16 and 9 boards from Anunoby, 17 boards from Josh Hart. And look, Philly's not any good, but the fact that you could walk out of there with the win despite being up 12 at the end of the first quarter, Philly battled back. Tyrese Maxey tends to play his best games of the Garden, as we know from last year. You get the win. You go to Memphis on Friday. That's a difficult opponent. It was a very good back-and-forth game. 2 teams exchanging shots. Ja Morant gets an and-1 with a few seconds left, but Jalen Brunson gets doubled in the last offensive possession, makes the good decision to pass to OG Anunoby, who hits the three-pointer with 4 seconds left. Bridges plays good defense on Morant. Edey misses the tip-in. And the Knicks find a way to win by 1. Brunson gets 23 points, 7 boards. Josh Hart has 12. Anunoby has 19. On a night where Cat didn't really do anything. Hit 11 points. But the Knicks found a way to win, and they swept the Memphis Grizzlies. And then last night, they're down in Miami. Heat are not as good as they once were, obviously. Miami builds an 18-point lead in the third quarter. You'd think it's not the Knicks' night, but they find a way, force the game into overtime, and they win 116-112. Jalen Brunson is, again, I think one of the most clutch players in basketball. 31 points, 5 boards, 6 assists last night. He just knows how to make plays at end of games. I mean, that's a culture changer right there. On a night when Bridges doesn't do much, but you've seen Anunoby start to emerge. He's healthier, 23 and 9 last night. Cat with 16 boards and just 19 points and 11 shots. Like, the offense is there, but the defense, the lockdown at the end, holding the Heat to 18 points in the fourth quarter. That's what's going to win these games. Now, the Knicks did get some big man depth back. They got Mitchell Robinson in the fold on Friday, which is huge. You're not going to see a lot of Mitch Robb early, but in his first 2 games, he had 5 rebounds in 12 minutes against Memphis on Friday and against the Heat. Just 13 minutes, 2 points, 2 boards. You want to get him assimilated into the mix, but the Knicks don't have a lot of front court depth. Ariel Hukporti, the guy who they were really high on, and the reason I think they traded Jericho Sims, he ends up getting hurt and being out now 4 to 6 weeks. So now you're looking at potentially they can now sign a player after March 1st. You're looking at the reports being like Moses Brown. Do they look as a big man option? Guy who used to be in Dallas, TJ Warren. I mean, they're going to look to try to fill out the depth on this bench. But look, through 60 games, if you told any Knicks fan they're 40-20, you would take it. It's probably the weirdest 40-20 route possible, but you're there. And it creates a very fun West Coast swing this week. Before they go out west, they will play Golden State on Tuesday. Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler at the Garden. Golden State's playing very good basketball. Near the 6th seed in the West right now. And then the big matchup Thursday night, 10 o'clock on TNT. Tomorrow's on TNT too, by the way. Thursday night, Knicks are at Crypto Arena against Luka and LeBron and the Lakers. Lakers beat the Knicks, of course, earlier this year without the night of the Luka trade. Knicks will then will stay in LA and play the Clippers on Friday and then play the Kings next Monday, the 10:30 tip on NBA TV. So the Knicks being out west after tomorrow for the next 5 games is going to tell something. The Knicks have done a really good job against Western Conference opponents this year. The Knicks against the West, they're 28-13 in the East. So if we take those numbers and dissect a little bit, they're 12-7 against Western Conference teams. So they've done a good job in that regard. I think they'll have a good West Coast trip. Maybe not a great one, but remember, when you go out west, you always look for like 6 games that look like a 3-3, 4-2 kind of thing. It's always like baseball. I kind of look for it the same way. But you got to give the Knicks a lot of credit. They've gone out, and at least after that rough stretch against Cleveland and Boston, they've bounced back and done some good things. Meanwhile, the Nets, last week they were close to potentially getting into playing, and that dream has kind of died off a little bit. They lose to the Wizards last week. Then they play the Thunder. They give it a tough fight, but they lose 129-121 the night when the Nets took 61 threes. 61. And only made 23 of them. They out-rebounded the Thunder, yet still managed to lose the game. So Oklahoma City, who again I think is one of the best teams in the NBA, SGA goes for 27, you lose that game. You get blown out by Portland at home, 121-102. Not a good performance against the Blazers. And then over the weekend, they get blown out in Detroit, 115-94 by the Pistons. Cade Cunningham with 9 points in the fourth quarter. Nets had a 30-13 third, only to get outscored 34-19 in the fourth. Brooklyn is also out, at least in Texas, for tomorrow night. They'll take on the Spurs. They'll host Golden State on Thursday, and then they are at Charlotte on Saturday before Luka and LeBron, the Lakers, come to Brooklyn next week. So that's your Nets update right now in terms of the play-in teams behind the Bulls in the loss column. But again, people are looking at more so like they're close to Toronto in terms of the trying to get into that top 5 lottery odds and trying to get that number 1 pick. But that'll be another storyline to follow over the next 22 games on the NBA slate. So let's take our first time out. We'll come back. We'll talk NFL Combine. Very interesting news and rumors involving both New York teams. The Giants lose out on Matthew Stafford, and the Jets have been looking at a lot of interesting rookie quarterbacks that they got a chance to see firsthand in Indy this week. We'll talk about all that coming up next. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all their sports. We'll be right back after this.
How we doing, sports fans? This is Christian Harvey, your host of Gritsville, USA, your go-to show for all things Detroit and Michigan here on IE Sports Radio. Whether you're here for Gritty Lions talk, getting pumped up for the great Detroit sports renaissance, or hating on your neighbor depending on if they were green or blue, we got you covered. Whether you're in the East, West, or Central, we got you covered. Join me as we tackle through all that the great state of Michigan has to offer in the world of sports. Catch me, Christian Harvey, each week on Gritsville, USA, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Mike from Indie Sports Nation. Come hang out with me each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk things Indiana sports. We talk Colts, Pacers, Fever, Indy Ignite, and we dive into the college scene as well. Boilermakers, Hoosiers, Irish, Bulldogs, and every school in between. But we don't stop there. We'll sprinkle in some NHRA and cover the IndyCar series. From the turf to the hardwood to the track, we got you covered. Come hang out with your boy, Big Mike, each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Indie Sports Nation, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, special thanks to Big Mike for the Indie Sports Report. Of course, as we get set to be back here on New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We're talking Indianapolis because we're talking NFL Combine. All the top prospects in this year's draft working out, or in some cases not working out, but getting interviews from teams. And of course, the NFL buzz is starting to come back again. As we said, free agency and the legal tampering period is going to be around this time next week. So we'll be live, hopefully getting some news on some top free agents and seeing what's going on over there. But the big story this week, I think, starts with the New York Giants, who were rumored to be involved in trying to get Matthew Stafford. They had talked with Matthew Stafford's representatives. There was talks about a potential $100 million guaranteed, but the Giants not only lose the sweepstakes as Matt Stafford decides to stay in Los Angeles with the Rams, they would have been third. They would have lost to Vegas. Now, when you heard what Tom Brady was out in Montana with Matthew Stafford, that's when you kind of knew, like, you're not going to beat Tom Brady and Pete Carroll in this. So while it was exciting for a little bit, the Giants were trying to get a player like this, and to me, it reeks of desperation from Joe Schoen. But Joe Schoen has to be desperate because him and Brian Daboll's job are on the line in 2025. Quite frankly, as we've said on the show in the past, they shouldn't have a job already. The Giants should have moved on and picked a new head coach and a new GM. But here we are. And now the latest buzz from the NFL is that the Giants are going to attempt to trade up to number 1 to get a franchise quarterback with Tennessee. Ideally, what all the talk is around is Cam Ward. It doesn't sound like there is a small gap. It seems like there is a large gap between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. The Titans have meetings this week with Ward and Abdul Carter, so they're going to start the process of meeting with some of the top guys at their facility. Remember, we're still over a month and a half away from the draft. So this process is going to take some time. That the Giants, we're not sure if they're going, like, we're not going to find out tomorrow that they're going to trade for number 1. It's going to take a bit. The Giants, from all rumors, and Connor Hughes from SNY had this, Art Stapleton as well. The price could start with just 2 third-round picks. You're looking at a swap of 1s, 2 3s, but we'll see if maybe more teams try to get involved. Maybe Vegas tries to get involved. Maybe the Jets try to get involved and offer a bigger price. Now, that would involve Tennessee moving down to 6, moving down to 7 in the Jets' case. I think the better thing is for their Tennessee is to go from 1 to 3. Because if you think Ward's going 1 and Cleveland might take quarterback at 2, but let's say they take Sanders, Tennessee still gets the best of the non-quarterbacks at 3. So with Mike Berganzi's first year as GM, it kind of makes sense to kind of stick at number 3 if they do go down. But the Giants are going to have to mortgage draft assets, and that's why beating the Colts was the worst thing this franchise could have did, because you wouldn't be in this position. You would just be picking number 1. You're picking Cam Ward, and that's it. But they did this to themselves. And now you're going to have to mortgage, not your future, but a good amount of draft capital to make this move happen. Now, if they go Cam Ward, that means that maybe we'll see what they do in the veteran quarterback market. And the weird rumor on Friday, Adam Schefter had it. Also, Pro Football Talk had talked about it as well earlier in the week. The Giants are looking at every veteran quarterback possible, including Aaron Rodgers. And I'll ask Joe Shane and the Giants this question. You watched the failure that was Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. Why would you want to try to do that again? You saw it firsthand, not in the same stadium you play games in, and you want to do that again. And I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers would be a failure with the Giants necessarily, but they are not a quarterback away from contention. So the only reason Aaron Rodgers would come here is if there's no other suitors. You can't tell me that Pittsburgh wouldn't be better for Rodgers because he could be with Mike Tomlin and be on a playoff team. You can't tell me that, hey, going with Brady in Vegas. You can't tell me there's got to be other options on the table than Aaron Rodgers, who at least got better at the end of last year, but he's still in his 40s. You're probably going to have to take Devontae Adams with you. The Jets are trying to move on from Adams, whether it be trade or cutting him or something, whatever it is. Do you want to have Rodgers essentially run the Giants? Because that's what it's going to be, because Aaron Rodgers is going to know when he comes here that, well, if I do bad, they're all going to go. So I don't get why Joe Shane is going to do this. And I heard Chris Canty on the radio this morning said, well, if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, that means they're going to tank for Arch Manning. And I've said this before. I don't want to hear the tank for Arch Manning stuff. The Giants are too much in the dumpster fire level of the NFL to be talking about tanking for quarterbacks. I mean, but again, what options are out there? That's why I asked if not Rodgers, then who? And I said that about the Jets as well. You're going to pay Sam Darnold a ton of money? We watched Sam Darnold in New York. I've seen that. Doesn't work. Justin Fields? You don't have Tyrod Taylor, the Jets do. Kirk Cousins? I mean, like the only way I could see Kirk Cousins is if you're looking to be bringing a mentor to a quarterback. Like if you wanted to do Kirk Cousins and Cam Ward, I can live with that. Because if you're bringing in Rodgers and you're going to draft somebody, is Aaron Rodgers in a position to mentor a quarterback? I don't know. That's something they have to ask themselves. So to look at that situation and say, that's who I want to hitch the wagon to, and Rodgers has called the Giants a couple of times apparently, I'm not so sure that's the way to go. But again, the quarterback options are few and far between this offseason. So I doubt it's going to be something that gets done right away, but that's going to be a storyline to monitor, is potentially Aaron Rodgers with the Giants. And after the Jet offensive line, it's much better than the Giants offensive line. I don't see it. Now, they're also looking at corner. Obviously, Deonte Banks has not fared well. The name to watch there could be Byron Murphy of the Vikings. If he gets the free agency, that's a player you could look at. You can look at the Jets and try to bring in DJ Reed. There is also Darius Slay, just got released by the Eagles today, according to Adam Schefter. So maybe the Giants look to bring in Slay. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that, but that's the latest on the Giants. Moving over to the Jets. We mentioned them possibly being in the Cam Ward sweepstakes, but Connor Hughes wrote an article on SNY last night that the Jets could be looking more into pairing a rookie with Tyrod Taylor. Maybe they also look at a Marcus Mariota or a Carson Wentz or somebody like that. The Jets are not in a position to win right now because you heard Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji at the Combine and talking about they want to win now and in the future. Okay, so what quarterback out there, and I said this for the Giants, is going to be a win now and win the future guy? The only one that maybe makes sense for that is if you can mold Justin Fields. But if Pittsburgh's going to let Russell Wilson go, Russell Wilson, I think, could be an option for the Giants, too. They brought him into their building last year. Is Pittsburgh, if they lose Wilson, really going to let Fields go? I don't think so. But the Jets have gone out and done their homework this week, and they've met with a bunch of the young quarterbacks. They've met with Cam Ward. They've met with Quinn Ewers. Jalen Milroe even got put through a workout by the new Jet quarterback coach, Charles London. So that's something to monitor. Remember, there was a report that all the quarterbacks were working, and Charles London put Milroe through a workout, which I found pretty interesting. The other name that was brought up that I think is going to be a fun one to look at is Kyle McCord. We talked about McCord on the show this year. Great season at Syracuse, broke a lot of ACC passing records. He's not the most mobile, but I think he grew as a player and as a person in his time at Syracuse after some rough times at Ohio State. And Ethan Greenberg, who is a reporter for the Jets, had this. Kyle McCord not only grew up a Jets fan, but do you wonder why he wears number 6? He wears number 6 because of Mark Sanchez. If I'm the Jet front office or I'm Woody Johnson, the second I hear that, somebody actually is wearing number 6 because of Mark Sanchez, that's got to be that's a Jet guy right there. And you can get him on day 2 of the draft. You address some needs day 1. You put Kyle McCord, one of these vets, and you pair him up and try to mold him into something. Because the Jets, I don't think, are in a position where they should trade up. I know that they can try to go from 7 to 1. But again, are they a Cam Ward away? And they don't necessarily have the assets to deal. Remember, they went and tried to trade for Devontae Adams, gave up some picks, and tried to do a bunch of other things. I don't think they have the capital that the Giants might in that scenario. And again, going from 1 to 3 for Tennessee is a lot better than 1 to 7 unless you're getting multiple ones and stuff like that. It gets tricky. Now, if the Jets stay where they are, the interesting thing is going to be who they take at 7, because they're going to have a lot of options on the table. I think that's going to be really something that follows. You look at pro days coming up and team visits, and we dive into all those things over the next month plus. The guy to watch is Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. That guy, to me, is a game changer. He was really the offense for Penn State at times last year. And remember last year, the Jets had a choice. They could either go with Brock Bowers or they could go with the offensive line. They elected to go elected to go offensive line. They take Fashanu, which I think he had a good first year. But you can't tell me if they could have maybe found a way to get Bowers, what would have helped. They lose Tyler Conklin probably in free agency. You think Conklin's going to get a big deal somewhere. So Warren slides right in and becomes your tight end. And you look at drafting a quarterback and giving him Garrett Wilson and Tyler Warren right out of the gate, you got to be thrilled with that. Like, Warren is kind of that new NFL mold of tight ends that I think makes the most sense. The Jets need game changers on offense. When you consider it's going to be Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and let's see. I mean, I love what Braylon Allen did last year as a running back, but they still need to get more game-changing pieces in here. So to me, the choice has to be Warren, if that's available. If not, there's Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, who I think would be a really good pick. We're going to do also some exercises. If you listened to us last year, we were doing mock drafts as we get closer to April. I think we'll try to do a giant mock draft, then we'll do a Jet mock draft, and then closer to the draft, we'll kind of make some predictions. Of course, follow the guys at 3 and Out, Taryn and Larry B doing some good things. They'll have a Combine post show this weekend talking about what happened at the Combine. Mike Pat, who hosts our Let's Whine About DMV Sports show, is like our NFL draft guru. He's our Mel Kiper, so you'll hear him a lot throughout this draft process. That's going to be a lot of fun. But the Combine brings around some interesting things. And again, with free agency just a week away, we're going to have some fun. Hopefully be breaking some signings, or reported signings, I should say, on the show next week. Coming up next, we're going to talk NHL. We're going to talk trade deadline coming up on Friday. Rangers are already getting a head start on it. Can they get themselves into the postseason? Are more moves on the way? Are the Devils going to be a really active buyer? And we're going to address Ralph's question from earlier. Should the Islanders buy or sell? And I'll give you an interesting stat about the NHL over the last month plus. It's going to be really interesting for all three locals. Stay tuned for that here on New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back talking pucks after this.
Hey, sports fans. Are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For a down south education on Florida sports and athletics, it's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies.
And your one-timers.
You wicked wristas.
And be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Moving over to the NHL here on New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Trade deadline is this Friday. So the NHL gets more into the focal points. We get into the final month of the season. Rangers decided, hey, we're not going to wait a little bit. Let's go out and make a deal. So on Saturday, it was reported that they made a trade with the Colorado Avalanche, trading away both defenseman Ryan Lindgren and forward Jimmy Vesey. In return, the Rangers get back Juuso Parssinen, Calvin DeHaan, and then second and fourth round picks in the 2025 NHL draft. The second round pick they get back is either going to be their own or the Hurricanes. The fourth round pick is going to be either the Avalanche or the Canucks. The Rangers also will retain half of Lindgren's contract, which was 1 year, $4.5 million. So they retain about $2 million of that contract. And there's a move that people are going to look to this deal and say, hey, the Rangers are looking to sell. It's not really the case. I mean, Ryan Lindgren's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Jimmy Vesey is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So the Rangers are going to tell themselves, and you saw this with Kakko when they dealt him to the Kraken earlier this year, they're in a position where they're not exactly Stanley Cup contenders. They're a position to make the playoffs, but they're not going to achieve what they're looking to achieve. So the key, I think, is going to be to get assets for players you're going to lose in free agency. And to get a second-round pick for Ryan Lindgren, who did not have a good year on defense for the Rangers, and you can get him into a place where he's going to, I think, help Colorado, at least with Cale Makar, I think is going to help this team. Rangers now, they don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft, but they've given themselves extra picks in the middle rounds of the NHL draft, which is going to be of huge help. Lindgren and Vesey were very valuable contributors to this team over the last couple of years, but it's time for the Rangers to really take a look at the youth movement. We saw that on display a little bit this week. Brennan Othmann got a chance to play in a couple of games. Brett Berard got called back up with Chris Kreider being put on IR, and Berard had a goal last night against Nashville. He's a player I think people want to see a lot more of We saw Johnny Brodzinski had 2 goals on Monday. The Rangers need to see what the youth in this team can do because we've seen the vets. The vets aren't playing well. So if the vets aren't playing well or they're hurt, it's time for the kids to get a shot because that's going to set up the next wave for the Rangers. So to make this move, and I think adding Parson is going to be a big help for this group as well. I mean, you look at Parson as a player, and he's a guy that the Rangers believe could be a third-line center. He's only 24 years old. He just played his 100th NHL game this year, so he's a player with a lot of experience, with not a lot of experience. So that's what I think that they're looking to see. Can this player mold into a solid contributor and kind of take on that role that they're looking for on the third line? They bring Calvin DeHaan. Now, that's a guy that you can maybe look for. He's even said this week, his stat line isn't sexy for a defenseman, but he's a vet. Can come in, help the younger guys. Maybe you flip him this week for something else. Not a bad asset to have. And like we said, more moves could be on the way. The next name that's on the list could be Riley Smith. Riley Smith's another player the Rangers got this offseason. He's a free agent at the end of the year. They could flip him to a team like Vegas or Tampa or Florida. Maybe they get some assets back, help their team. Do they look to deal Jonathan Quick, who had a shutout last night in his 800th career game? Congratulations to Jonathan Quick. But if you don't feel you're in it for the playoffs and a team needs goaltending, do you look at dealing a Jonathan Quick away? That's something that has to be on the table for the Rangers. All options are there. Now, JT Miller's come in and been great. He's made an awesome impact on this group, but there's still some inconsistencies there. You look at the week that was for the Rangers. We talked about the Islanders win on Tuesday, but a disappointing game Friday against Toronto where they had outshot the Maple Leafs in this game. They put up 33 shots. Igor only faced 16, and Toronto still found a way to win 3-2. Now, again, it's a little different. The Rangers don't have Adam Fox, who left Monday's game against the Islanders with an injury. He's on IR right now. The Rangers hope to get him back toward the end of the year. Kreider's just on IR right now. We'll see when he comes back. But Adam Fox is a bigger injury because that's a player that really they're going to miss on defense. K'Andre Miller got hurt Monday, but he's been back in the lineup, so it's been a good relief for them. But the problem for the Rangers is they can't seem to win 3 in a row. Every time it looks like they're on the right track, they lose a game like they did Friday. Now, Toronto's a good team, but when you have the great shot disparity, you should win that game. Now, they did bounce back yesterday against the Predators. Predators aren't any good. Rangers won 4-0. We said 34 saves are quick. Panarin had a goal. Miller had a goal. They look really good. And this is an interesting week for the Rangers. 4 games this week. Starts tonight against the Islanders at the Garden. They play Wednesday against Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals on TNT at home. Ovechkin is 10 goals away from tying the record. I think this is the last time the Rangers played the Capitals this year. So you're not going to get to see Ovechkin break the record against the Rangers, which I guess is a plus considering all the playoff memories he's given the Ranger fans. But then 2 critical games for playoff contention this week. They have against Ottawa on the road, 12:30 puck drop on Saturday. And then Sunday at 6 at MSG, Blue Jackets, Rangers. Blue Jackets have been playing some good hockey. They swept the Red Wings, including in the Stadium Series, an emotional game there, I'm sure. Rangers this year against Columbus, they've actually beat them both times. They play them twice in the next 2 weeks, and they're only 4 points behind Columbus right now. So those are huge games that you have to find a way to get 2 points in. And the Rangers aren't that far behind. I mean, you look right now at the wild card, they're 2 points behind Detroit, 4 points behind Ottawa. Ottawa's tied with them, but Ottawa's played 1 fewer game. Rangers are also tied with Boston, but Boston's played 2 more games. So the Rangers have that both bad luck and good luck at the same time. So what can they look to do this Friday? There's been talk about maybe they look to add, definitely I think they would look to add a defenseman in addition to DeHaan. Maybe they look to get some veteran help there. Do they look for offense? I don't think so. I think Miller was the big move offensively. And we'll see what they do there. So they're not, I think they're going to make a move, but it's not going to be that blockbuster move, even though it's weird. They actually have the cap space to do it. They're 16 million, I think like 14, 15 million under the cap right now. We'll see what they decide to do. Local hockey teams, the Devils. Devils have not played well. They've struggled a little bit on this West Coast trip. They were out in Colorado last Wednesday. They lost 5-1, 2 goals from Nathan McKinnon. Mackenzie Blackwood stopped 22 shots against his former team. Nisha had 3 assists. Cale McCarr 2 assists. Rough game out there for the Devils. They went to Utah, picked up a nice 3-1 win. Nico Hischier got a goal. Timo Meier gets a goal in the third period. Nico Dawes played well in net. And then last night in Vegas, 2 power play goals by the Golden Knights in the third period. Mark Stone and Noah Hannafin. Vegas beats Jonas Markstrom and New Jersey 2-0, 25 saves and a shutout for Aiden Hill. So the Devils right now, look at their standings. They're down in the 3 spot in the Metro, but Columbus is just 4 points behind from New Jersey having to be in that wild card. And that's something you don't want to be in because then you might have to draw a Washington in the first rounds. The Devils want to try to avoid that at all costs. We'll see what Tom Fitzgerald decides to do this week. Elliot Friedman, who's a really good NHL insider, reporting early in the week the Devils could be looking to trade for a center. We'll see if they can find any center depth out there. But Tom Fitzgerald, the GM, is reportedly one of those players that is very active at the trade deadline. So something to monitor there with New Jersey. I think they're definitely going to look to make a move. I think they need at least a jolt in that room. Again, West Coast trips we talked about, the Knicks are very, very tricky. So just something to keep an eye on. And then finally, the Islanders. And let's get back to Rob's question from earlier. Do you see the Islanders as buyers or sellers? I think, Ralph, they should be sellers. I think you look at the vets in that room. I know Lou Lamoriello has talked about not trading Brock Nelson. I think it's something you have to look into. Kyle Palmieri would be interesting if they found a way to make a move there. But they are not in position right now. The Islanders, reportedly, Stefan Rosner had it earlier today. Anthony Duclair is a healthy scratch tonight, so that move hasn't worked out the way the Islanders had hoped. They're at 61 points right now, which is second to last in the Metro. And there's 5 points, but they're only 5 points behind Detroit for a playoff spot. So does Lou Lamoriello truly believe this team is ready to try to make a playoff run? And their schedule's not easy. Rangers tonight, Winnipeg at home tomorrow. Winnipeg is the best team in the NHL right now with almost 90 points. And then they go out west. Sharks on Saturday, Ducks on Sunday. Sharks are any good, but the Ducks at least are right around where the Islanders are. And then they have Los Angeles next Tuesday, Edmonton next Friday, then Florida a week from Sunday. So going Kings, Oilers, Panthers, that's a very tough stretch. Are the Islanders in a position to make that move? Now, I'll give them credit. After losing to the Rangers, they bounced back in a big way. They beat Boston 2-1 on Thursday. A very strong game for Ilya Sorokin, 38 saves. Kyle Palmieri got a huge goal late in the game to get that win. Then Saturday, a 7-4 win over Nashville. We said Nashville's not any good, but the fun storyline from that game, and some will look to more so the goal scoring for the Islanders in this one. You had Brock Nelson with 2 goals, but Pajot had a goal, Palmieri had a goal. But the big story is Ilya Sorokin. Ilya Sorokin picked up his first career goal. He had made a save on a shot from Stamkos and then put into the empty net late in the game. And the fun fact on Ilya Sorokin, which I found really interesting, now we've seen a lot of goalie scores this year. I think it's like the 3rd or 4th this season, which is not something you see very often. But this is not the first time that the Islanders have had a goalie put the puck in the net. The last time, let's pull that up for you real quick. I believe was in the second Islander goalie with a goal. Billy Smith, who is a Hockey Hall of Famer, had the first goal in NHL history against the Colorado Rockies, who are now the Devils, November 28th, 1979. So this doesn't happen that often in Islanders history, so Sorokin deserves it. He's been money for this team. They're nowhere near close to the playoffs without him. So it's not shocking. Again, the Islanders' schedule is very tough. I think with the veterans they have and what is a seller's market in the NHL, you're not seeing a lot of these contending teams like give Florida credit going out this weekend and getting Seth Jones, especially with the injury to Matthew Tkachuk. I think they did a good job at least trying to gear up for back-to-back Stanley Cups potentially. But mostly it's a seller's market. We're going to see how good the how good of a deal the Islanders can get, and is Lou Lamoriello going to sell off these vets? It's going to be real interesting how he views this team in the long term and what kind of moves they can make over the next few days. But again, Islanders Rangers tonight at the Garden. If you're looking for something, no football, baseball, spring training, got some games tonight, by the way, in baseball, spring training, we'll dive into next. But if you're looking for Islanders Rangers, that is on tonight. Coming up next, we're going to talk baseball and soccer to wrap up the show. Mets and Yankees in action tonight, as I mentioned. But the Yankees dealing with some big injuries in spring training. Can they survive them? And will they make any moves to try to correct them? That's all coming up next. Our final segment of New York State of Sports coming up next. You're listening to New York State of Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. We'll be back to wrap up the show after this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we're the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Galise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports, and I will update you on all that's black and gold. Have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Galise, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Wrapping up New York State of Sports, episode 80 here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. We're only 20 episodes away from the great, the 100th episode, which is going to be let me start planning for that for sure. Real quick, AP poll just came out. St. John's has moved up, not top 5, but they're number 6 in the AP poll. They'll again only have one game this week, so maybe they end the regular season in the top 5. Remember, Alabama still plays Auburn this weekend. Duke plays North Carolina. There's still crazy games this week. That Florida, I think, has a tough schedule as well this week. But no surprise, they only moved up one spot. I was hoping they would get into 5. But again, 6 is still incredible what they've been able to do. But that's the latest AP poll. We usually update you around at 1 o'clock. Moving over down to Florida, spring training baseball in full effect, and the Yankees are probably wishing that they dealt with a little fewer injuries. Of course, Giancarlo Stanton, nobody's surprise, is going to start the season on the IL. Again, the Stanton stuff, you just want more clarity. He hasn't been back at spring training. I think people are wondering what his personal issues are that he's caused to miss spring training. But we'll see when he comes back. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But the Yankees, I think, definitely need to figure out what they're going to do with DH. But a couple other new ones. Luis Gil on Friday was reported he was going to get an MRI on his shoulder, which I think is a bigger, again, people saying it's not the elbow, but I mean, if the Yankees expect Luis Gil to miss time, that's a big blow. Gil, of course, being the rookie of the year last year, definitely threw more innings than anybody expected, was really a spark to this team. Now, it does help that Marcus Stroman is still here. So we're all talking maybe they would trade Stroman. He's going to probably be on the roster if Gil begins the season on the injured list. We don't know what the storyline with that is. No results for the MRI have come out yet. But you have Will Warren at AAA, who's done some good things. You sign Carrasco to a minor league deal. Maybe the Yankees look to add another starter somewhere. We'll see. One of the things interesting tonight down in Tampa, Max Fried, 6:30 on Yes, is going to make his spring training debut against Pittsburgh Pirates. We saw Garrett Cole make his first start on Friday, so that's going to at least – the Yankees, I think, are fine rotation-wise. Clark Schmidt got a slow start of spring training, but he's ramped himself back up, which is really good, had the back issues. And then DJ LeMahieu, who predictably plays one game in spring training, and hurts the calf. At some point, the Yankees, I think, are just going to have to realize they probably have to eat the money for LeMahieu and call it a sunk cost, because I don't see how he stays healthy. I don't see how he is able to get through the year okay. And the Yankees to rely on that at third base is a mistake. And I don't know why they're still relying on LeMahieu. Maybe they just don't want to spend any more money. Doesn't mean they're cheap, but I don't think they want to spend more money. And it sounds like right now Oswaldo Cabrera is the favorite to be the third baseman. I like Cabrera, but I like Cabrera as a guy that can play all over the diamond. I don't want him being the everyday third baseman. He still has to show he can kind of hit from both sides of the plate, has to show consistency. It's better, I think, than Peraza at third base, but the Yankees have tried that a couple of games this spring. I just think there's a lot of holes there. They do need one more bat. It doesn't sound like they're going to go get Nolan Arenado. But the interesting thing this week, the Cardinals were playing the Yankees this past week in Tampa, middle of the week. And normally, just to give some insight, Jupiter, Florida, where the Cardinals play, is a long trek, and these teams take buses to go to road games. You don't see a lot of veterans take trips to road games. Nolan Arenado played in the lineup in Tampa against the Yankees. And people were hinting that day, possibly a showcase. And what does Arenado say? I just came down to Tampa to say hi to Goldschmidt and say hi to DJ. Of course, he played with Goldschmidt in St. Louis last year. I don't doubt that was part of the reason, but you can't tell me he wasn't trying to showcase himself a little bit. But the Yankees, I don't know how much money they're willing to take on. So the announcement doesn't make sense. Now, John Heyman reported this past week that the Yankees are looking to J.D. Martinez. J.D. Martinez had some decent moments with the Mets, but kind of tailed off toward the end of the year. Can J.D. be good? Maybe. But again, Scott Boras client. I don't know if the Yankees really want to try to get in negotiations with Martinez. So are they going to go make a move for a bat, or are they just going to say, hey, we're going to put Ben Rice at DH? And Ben Rice has added some more muscles, got some more pop. Maybe it's time the Yankees showed more faith with the kids. We're seeing Dominguez is probably going to get some left field spots, even though he's struggled a little bit in spring training, but it's early. I think the problem we run into with – I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but this is the problem with baseball in today's day and age in society. Baseball is a tough sport for the younger generation to get into because we all want instant gratification. We all want instant results. Baseball's a 162-game season. Baseball is basically all about patience. It's all about growing as a team. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We want everything now as a society. We want if your guy's struggling the first week of spring training, it's doomsday, and that's why spring games to me take too long. Even when you look at April, people overreact to April way too quickly. April, I used, hey, baseball's back on my TV every night, and if the team starts off 4-4, so what? Like I don't really worry about, like, baseball used to be your unofficial checkpoint. It was Memorial Day, but now in this day and age of social media and all these things, we overreact to every little thing possible. Jason Dominguez is not going to be, maybe he's not going to be the greatest left fielder, but I don't think he's going to be terrible out there either. So there you go. That's my spread. That's my tangent on baseball, and maybe I'll dive into it this week. Remember, tomorrow night you have the bullpen bulletin with myself, Alton K, and Mike Pat, which has been fun. We've done 2 episodes. We got our 3rd one coming up this week, again, Tuesday at 9:00. So maybe I'll dive into that a little bit more on that show. But so the Yankees, as I said, they play the Pirates tonight. Max Fried, as I said, gets the start. Pirates are going to start Bailey Falter, who's a major leaguer. No Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens pitched earlier this week. Yankees also will play the Phillies. They'll play the Twins, Blue Jays, Astros, Cardinals. So we don't really do spring schedules, but if you're looking for something like that, that's what you'll get. Rodon will pitch again in Clearwater tomorrow. He's had a rough first couple of games this spring, but to me, for Rodon, it's all about being healthy. It's not necessarily about his results. I think he'll be fine. Mets are in action tonight, 6:00 on SNY, and it is the spring debut of Kodai Senga. He will get the ball going on over there. And the interesting thing for the Mets, I think, to me, is 2 things we'll talk about. They don't really have any big injuries to go into, but I think what's going to be fun over the next couple of weeks is going to be what do the Mets do with Brett Baty? Brett Baty's having another solid spring. He's been hitting the ball out of the ballpark. The problem for him is going to be, can he earn a spot off the bench? The Mets have given Baty every opportunity. Like I've said last year that the Mets could have won the division if Mark Vientos was the third baseman to begin the year. Mark Vientos had beaten Brett Baty for the job, in my opinion. The Mets really want Brett Baty to happen. They'll give him chances. It's not going to be a third base, but can Baty move around, play different positions, learn some defense to get his bat in there? He's been given chances at the major league level. He hasn't panned out the way people have expected, but this is somebody they want to get that job. With Nick Madrigal being out for the year, essentially, there's going to be a spot on that bench. And, of course, Ralph also asked, does Luis Angel Acuna make it? I think Baty and Acuna are competing for one of those spots. And Acuna now, I think, has an inside track because he's a middle infielder. Madrigal was going to be that middle infield type. Who knows if there's still a reunion with Jose Iglesias? We'll see. But time is going to tell on that. And again, they're going to try to get him the job. I'm not exactly sure it's going to be his. And he's had good springs before. He's got to show it when the lights are brightest and actually in the regular season. Meanwhile, it was a fun storyline this weekend. Blade Tidwell, get to know him a little bit, 23-year-old, was the 2nd-round pick of the Mets in 2022 out of Tennessee. He pitched against the Rays and had an immaculate inning, 9 pitches, 9 strikes, for those not familiar with that. Tidwell last year pitched at AA and AAA. It was not good in AAA, had an ERA of almost 6, but he was 2-4 to begin the year in AA with a 2.41 ERA. 44 strikeouts over 37 in the 3rd innings. This is a pitcher, again, when you look at the Mets injuries, Blade Tidwell is going to be a guy kind of in the spotlight. He's really highly regarded at college. You look at kind of him and Brandon Sproat as those next men up, but the Mets had a couple of injuries. So somebody to keep an eye on to look at prospects. Like on the Yankee side, George Lombard Jr. hit a home run this weekend. He's a player they're really high on going forward as an infielder. So you want to look at those next pieces in spring training. Those are a couple players to watch. Finally, as we move over to soccer, Red Bulls get back on track. They get their first win of the season. They were taking on Nashville, and they got off to a really good start out of the gate on Saturday. They picked up a 2-0 win. What was your final? Mohamed Sofo in his first MLS game, he scores a goal in the 7th minute. And Emil Forsberg, of course, their leader, he gets a goal in the 30th minute. So the Red Bulls pick up a 2-0 win. And why that wasn't... So the Sofo goal was interesting on a variety of different things. There was an interesting stat somebody had. I'm trying to pull up who it is because it was, but we'll get into that in a minute. They had 11 shots on goal in this game. Forsberg had 2. Maxim Choupo-Moting had 2, which was a really cool thing as well. So I want to get the person who gave this out because it was really cool what was able to accomplish for the Red Bulls, that they had I think it was their openers, their home openers. They had all these different goal scorers, but I'll try to pull it up. I had the stats somewhere. I can't seem to find it at the moment, but we'll try to find that as we go. But a strong showing for the Red Bulls. Coronel was great in net. No surprise there. Their next opponent is going to be on Saturday at 7:30. They're going to take on Atlanta FC. Now, Atlanta has played 2 games. They lost to Charlotte 2-0 on Saturday and then beat Montreal 3-2 in their first game. Meanwhile, the problem for NYCFC, and we've mentioned it over and over last year, second halves is what does them in. And they had another opportunity to get 2 points. They had the tie against Inter Miami. Was 0-0 for the bulk of the game against LA, and they end up losing 1-0. Goal in the 86th minute by Ryan Hollingshead. NYCFC just has 2 shots on goal in the game, so not really a strong performance there. And they actually had possession. They had more possession than LAFC, but managed to lose that game. Next up for NYCFC is the Yankee Stadium opener. That is March 8th, Saturday, 7:30. They will play Orlando. Orlando beat Toronto 4-2 on Saturday. Their first 2 games, they had a 4-2 loss to Philadelphia Union on the 22nd, and they played Miami, but I think this was that's a friendly. So they played 2 games, and they've lost 1 and won 1 as well. The final big thing we're going to get into on this show, there was boxing at the Barclays Center over the weekend, and as we try to do here with New York is we cover everything locally as best as we can, and it was a really fun match. Gervonta Davis against Lamont Roach, and I believe there was was not a good ultimately in the end the fight ending in controversy. Tank Davis, which is Gervonta Davis, got a majority draw. He retains his lightweight title in the WBA. Davis is one of those players that people look to, but eventually there was a little bit of an issue with the match where he wasn't able to get the win. People expected him to get the win. People are wondering if there's going to be a rematch for this fight, but we'll see what happens. But that's the fun thing with boxing. You try to have these next stars, and we've seen it with Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez. Is Gervonta Davis that next guy? We will see, but not a controversial end while retaining your title in the process. Really quickly, though, on a New York note, Joe Sherman from the Post had it that Jacob deGrom for the Rangers is going to begin the year an extra rest and be the 5th starter. So see if deGrom has a healthy year with the Rangers. But thank you all for tuning in this week. It has been a fantastic show. We've had over 500 of you listening on X. Fantastic. It's a testament to really what you guys are doing. I love seeing you guys supporting the show. We've done 80 of these episodes. It's been great. St. John's has been great. Congratulations again to Rick Pitino and the Red Storm. First tournament in 40 years, which is great. First Big East regular season title in 40 years. First tournament they're going to make in a few years. But we'll see what St. John's does in the postseason. Of course, postseason basketball is coming up locally. The NEC tournament this week begins. Central Connecticut State is the favorite in that one. They've won 12 in a row. Wagner is someone to watch as well. Long Island's the 2 seed. We've talked about them this year. The Sharks have done a good job with Ron Strickland. We got the Coastal this weekend with Hofstra, Stony Brook. Monmouth, Abdul Bashir is one of the greater 3-point shooters in the country. He's going to be a player that if you're a big program, you're going to try to get to your transfer portal next year. So those are going to be two small tournaments you want to watch. And be prepared for the Big East, the Atlantic 10, the Big 10 with Rutgers we'll talk about next week. Rutgers lost to the buzzer to Michigan. Seton Hall, of course, good fight, but they lost to St. John's. Syracuse, of course, 1 week left in the year. We'll look ahead to them in the ACC tournament next week. NHL trade deadline on Friday. Who makes moves between the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils? Can the Yankees actually avoid injuries this week in spring training? And can the Knicks continue to win? A really fun West Coast trip coming up with the Warriors, the Lakers, Clippers. Can they be able to keep it going? Again, they're 40-20, and people talk about them like they're a bad team. We'll see. But thanks again to all who tuned in and too much fun. We got a great lineup coming up for you on the network today. Adam Carnick with Citation Weekly, Neil with Carolina Sports Weekly is coming on soon. The Extra Mile. This is KC Sports. Mondays and Tuesdays are usually jam-packed here on IE Sports Radio. Again, we're going to have some fun over the next couple of weeks. March Madness, opening day, Giants and Jets with free agency. Next week, around this time, maybe we'll get some signings in the NFL. And that should make it a lot of fun. And of course, the Liberty will be pretty soon as well. WNBA Draft is just a month away. We'll talk about them. So from all of us here at IE Sports Radio, thanks to Taryn, thanks to Brian for chiming in, thanks to Ralph, thanks to all of you who have tuned in as well. From all of us here at IE Sports Radio, Ricky K saying a great start to your week. Enjoy the sports. See you back here next time.